Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and I have a press release. Family Rights Rally, the Children's Movement, which will happen Saturday, May 21st, 2022, at the Washington Monument, Washington, D.C., Northeast Quadrant. This will take place between 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. The sponsor is Family Forward Project, and the objective is to unify and provide information and networking opportunities for families dealing with child protective services and child welfare. And it's to unify all platforms across the nation to make one major statement and demand for reform. Many people are speaking out and drawing attention to the injustice through child welfare. This is the time for change. So we all hope to see a lot of people there. And I have a return guest. I have Stephen Wade. He's a family law specialist, and he's from the United Kingdom. He is one of the co-founders of the Family Law Assistance franchise, a total of 5 around the UK. And the Family Law Assistant franchise is growing a band of new breed of legal practitioners to help people represent themselves. I welcome you back to the show, Stephen Wade. And how are you doing today?
Yes, it's fine. Great day, a great busy day. Great to be back.
I'm glad to have you back. We're going to talk about smoke and mirrors and false accusations and what to do about them.
Sure. Okay. So, I've worked in family law for about 16 years now, and just about every case I've assisted in, there have been allegations of some kind. All sorts of allegations. Obviously, the sort of things that many of the listeners are probably very familiar with. Abuse allegations against children and against partners, financial abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, anything you can think of. It's a very, very, very common thing that has to be dealt with on a daily basis. It's almost a certainty, I would say, that if you're involved in family law, there's someone who's going to be making an allegation of abuse.
You know,
And yes, so go ahead.
oh, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and you know what? It's something that people obviously struggle with a great deal because no one wants to be accused of something unpleasant, much less so if they know for a fact they haven't done it. The problem is though, is that what constitutes abuse can be very, very subjective. It's in the eye of the beholder. Now, I specialise in family law in the UK and civil courts, so the burden of proof is the balance of probabilities. It's not beyond reasonable doubt like a criminal court. If you go to a criminal court here in the UK, and I imagine it's much the same in the US, a jury will be ordered to find someone guilty only if they're sure that someone's actually committed a crime, without any doubt. In the UK, it's all about, in the civil courts, the balance of probabilities. Is it more likely that something happened than it didn't? And that's where it leaves people. People always say that you get found guilty in a family court. The family court would say that it's not about guilt, it's about finding or not finding facts. So it's actually much more difficult to prove that you didn't do something. It's as simple as that. All you need to do is convince a court. You don't need anything like evidence or proof. What you need to do is convince a court.
Mm-hmm. Well, if someone over there, say, is an allegation of, say, child abuse of some sort, don't they have to go through like some type of, court type of thing with that agency that is coming up with this allegation?
It depends. It depends where the allegation is made. It's if it's made in court. Well, if it's made to the police may or may not investigate it. If it's made in a civil court, the court may or may not investigate it. Now, as someone who assists people in family law, my golden rule to someone is if they've had an allegation made against them, the easiest way to do it and the best way to do it is just to refute the allegation and move on. You do not have to prove that you didn't do something. The other side has to prove that you did. It's as simple as that. It's a tactic often used by people making accusations that they'll hit the person typically making the application to see the children with a raft of allegations that tie them up in knots. What they'll do, and the person's natural response will be they want their day in court. They won't be able to prove their innocence and to have their say. The only problem is when you're there to say make an application to see your children, Are you going to deal with that, or are you going to deal with the 150 allegations made against you? Court hearings are short. They've got no. There's no. The courts are overrun at the moment, especially following lockdown and due to budget cuts. So,
Mhm.
in your 30-minute hearing, if you've got a choice between dealing with those 150 allegations or making a case why it is in your children's best interest to see you, you sure as hell better deal with the why your case for your children's right to see you. Now, I always say to people, like I say, refute the allegations. If someone says to you, you did this list of things that you shouldn't have done, no, say no, it didn't happen, and move on. It's as simple as that. The court has got a number of options. The first one is to basically ignore the allegation. Now, believe me, that does happen. The court sees allegations on a daily basis. It can't possibly deal with every allegation made in court because, as I say, they're ubiquitous. They happen all the time. You get to a hearing if an allegation is made, the judge, the magistrates may ask you about the allegations, and they may try and deal with it there and then. They'll deal with it there. The third option is to order a finding of fact, and in the UK, that's a type of hearing where the matter concerning the children is put on hold, and the court will establish if a number of allegations named by the accuser are more likely to happen than not. They'll usually pick out relevant examples. So, for example, if someone will say stuff like, he was consistently abusive of me throughout the relationship, the court will say, okay, well, we need specific examples of this sort of thing. It can't be generalized allegations. Saying that does happen, but it does actually put things on hold. There'll be a time when people will have to gather evidence, they'll have to put it into trial bundles, and then there'll be a hearing. This can actually hold things up tremendously, months at a time. It puts a brake on things, and the court will not deal with the children's relationship with the parents until that matter is sorted. Now, I always say to people, there's a number of things you can do if you're faced with allegations. If you didn't do it, you just say it didn't happen, move on. If you did do it, there's a really simple way of dealing with this, and you hold your hands up and say, yes, I did it. Now, the courts are a huge fan of insight. I often say to I will take the point of view that my clients are telling me the truth, because what else can I do? If they're lying to me, I can't help them. I will say to people, if you have done something, tell me. We can deal with this. We can mitigate it. We can handle it. If, for example, my client admits to have done something, and, for example, an anger management class is relevant, I would say, look, we'll voluntarily get you to an anger management class. The court may not accept it because it's not court ordered, but insight is a really, really powerful weapon. If you didn't do something, however, you say it didn't happen, and that's it. Now, the sad thing is that for all these allegations, it doesn't necessarily have to stop the relationship with the children. It can delay things, and it can make people give up, and it can make people shoot themselves in the foot when it comes to a court case. So I would say to people, even if you go to a finding of facts hearing and you've got a dozen allegations made against you, the court will want to apply some kind of a remedy to that sort of stuff. It will be, like I say, anger management classes, parenting classes, sometimes a DV course, which my client may or may not feel is fair or appropriate, especially if they're sure the allegations and the findings made against are false. But sometimes people are left with a stark choice here. Let's imagine that you've got a man who's been accused of domestic violence, and that's been found against him in court, and the court's remedy is for him to take part in a DV course before he sees his children. He has a choice there, to attend the course or not to attend the course. Sometimes the court will say there will be no contact between the children and the parent until the course is attended. It's a hard choice, and it's one that I don't envy. Where you effectively have to admit to something that you're not happy to admit to do so. But often that is the option left to a parent.
Yeah, that's hard. That's a hard thing.
It most definitely is. And it's something we say to people, look, we can argue about whether it's fair or not. We both know the answer to that. We can talk if it's right or it's appropriate or anything like that. But what is your number one goal here? And if it's if it's to actually have a relationship with your children, then you're just going to have to bite that bullet. And you know what? As the lady that helped me in court many years ago said, if you want justice and fairness, you don't go to court.
Right. That is a sad fact, unfortunately.
Definitely. I mean, it's no, it is one of the hardest things you'll ever face. I went through it myself, and during my case, I actually made on several occasions. I prompted the other side to make the allegations openly in court, so the court would investigate, and they refused. One thing I would say that I've noticed over the years is that allegations tend to be less common. And do you know what you get instead of allegations now? Concerns.
Mhm.
The way I read this, an allegation is an accusation of a particular kind of act. It might be, I don't know, for example, I'm fearful his violence. I'm, no, so no, he hit me, his violence. It might
Mhm.
be he's abused the children. Concerns are of course of a different colour. Concerns are typically something along lines of, he's never harmed the children, but I'm scared he might do at some point. And this is much more nebulous because now you're proving that you wouldn't do something you've never done. And it
Mhm.
is really, really hard to deal with those sort of things.
Yeah, it seems like, and I'm sure this is happening over in the UK, that you have some people that call in false accusations and allegations on a continuous basis, as if they have nothing better to do.
Oh, definitely. I mean, remembering, in air quotes, new allegations is something that people do from time to time. So there might be finding a fact, the allegations have been dealt with, as already mentioned, and then at some point there'll be a fresh set of allegations, more historical allegations. Now, it's something that we try and handle with our clients. We'll actually encourage the other party to make as many allegations as possible that so we can basically draw a line under it. Because as I said before, whether the court find against someone or they don't find against someone, at some point you're going to want to draw a line under those allegations. So you do the damn DV course, you do the anger management course, or the allegations are disproved and it should be dealt with. This can be handled by case management with the court. I have known courts before to say to a parent making a fresh set of allegations, basically, I'm not hearing this, I'm not going to listen to this. Pretty much I can see that you're just attempting to hold things up. It's much more common when the litigant is acting alone rather than the assistance of a solicitor. You know what? I know solicitors, lawyers, barristers, whatever you want to call them, get an awful lot of flack, and some of that's quite justified. But something in terms of good case management is a lawyer will say to their client, we can't keep making these allegations. You're going to damage your own credibility in case if you keep on doing this sort of stuff.
Mhm. Well, that makes sense, but some people just don't have sense.
Oh, well, of course, we're dealing with the family court, of course. But the thing is, like I say, these allegations can only be used to delay things. I always say to my clients that that you're barring a couple of things, you're not beaten in a family court until you give up. People get drained by it, or as you know, there people know, but people are ruined mentally or financially, or they just can't face it anymore. And that's another harsh truth. I can totally understand why people give up and walk away. I mean, hell, I wanted to do the same thing during my case. It lasted 5 years and there were multiple allegations. I can completely understand, but you're not beaten in most cases until you're given up. Until your kids have been adopted, you've not been beaten. Now, that's not to say that you should instantly put another new court application in. Sometimes there's a time to put an application in. Sometimes it's to actually exert soft power. So I will do things with my clients. Say, okay, right, well, now is not the time to go back to court, but there are lots of things you can do in the meantime to build for a future application. But yeah, it's all in the parents. I know allegations can really wreck lives. I've seen the same sort of thing on social media. I've seen, it's amazing, that everyone on suddenly is on Facebook has got a view on it. I had the same thing. I had friends saying, "Well, there's no smoke without fire," and people wouldn't do it. People wouldn't say that would do it for a reason, and you're probably going to lose friends and even family members who side with an accuser. Once again, this comes back purely to focus. What's your number one goal here? Is it to prove your ex wrong? Is it to take on the family law system? Is it to teach your ex a lesson? Or is it a relationship with your children?
Mhm. Because once those accusations hit, at least over here, it just holds everything up, and they immediately, um, you lose contact with your kids, or it's supervised contact.
Yeah, yeah.
It's and it just holds, as you said, it just holds everything up. It's
And this is what exactly. I mean, it's exactly the same as in the UK. And I always say you can hold things up, but you probably can't stop them. I mean, it's really good to actually just to get a big picture view of this sort of stuff. Someone that's making allegations, they've got nothing positive to add. They've got no strategy other than delaying things. If you're going to keep going and you're going to keep going and you're not going to give up, then all that's happening is the inevitable is being going to be delayed, and the inevitable is a relationship with your children. Now, often that perhaps that won't be the relationship you necessarily want. For example, your children living with you, or you becoming what's known in the UK as a primary carer. But like I say, there is always something you can do.
mhm. Well, it's great if your family supports you and knows these things aren't true. But then, these accusers will also contact family members trying to sway them to
Yeah.
believe that this is true. I mean, I think that's just so sick.
It quite possibly, and you're quite possibly going to lose a relationship with your own family members while that happens. I've been involved in cases where our clients' siblings have sided with the ex-partner. With the parents, we've seen this sort of stuff. I guess no. I guess it comes down to the old strategy of divide and conquer.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know. It's just something that's just never going to go away. You
No, I mean it's funny. At the end of the day, I'm actually my background before I started working in family law, kind of corporate. I've worked in things like business analysis and process, and it's something I often sit around and think to myself: if I was able to reform the family law system, what could I do to disincentivize people from making allegations? Because as we both know, allegations are a huge silver bullet which hold things up. They drive people away. They make people give up. What can be done to disincentivize allegations? Now, one of the things we actually do when we're assisting clients is when it comes to a trial, like a final hearing, for example, we'll help our clients put a trial bundle together, and the other party will be cross-examined. And one of the common themes is actually coming up with examples to demonstrate the other party's hostility. In the UK, we work on the best interest of the child, that lovely nebulous concept, which is whatever the judge says it is at the given hearing. You're never going to know, and I'm never going to know, but that's what it is. But I think most people would agree that hostility between parents is not in a child's best interests. So if there's, for example, continuous allegations made throughout a case, that is something we will focus on when it comes to a final hearing. No, are you aware you made 174 allegations in the last 9 years, and how many of those allegations were demonstrated in court? Do you think this could be demonstrate your hostility towards your ex-partner? This sort of stuff can also always help tip things a little bit in your balance. Maybe you're the most awful person in the world, but you know what? If you've committed 174 horrible acts of abuse against another parent, chances are a few of them there's going to be evidence for.
Mhm,
With that, then there's going to be there's a story to tell there.
mhm. Well, it should show the judge that there is a pattern going on. But what do you do with these judges that just ignore the pattern?
Okay, yeah, exactly. So that's where it will come into. And I was say to clients, judges are a law until themselves.
Mhm,
The phrase in UK is the court has a wide ambit of discretion, which I always think is a nice legal term, pretty much saying that the judge can do whatever he likes. It's
mhm,
but and you know what? You can't argue. No, you can't argue with judges other than to make an appeal. And appeals are deliberately hard because let's be honest, if everyone who didn't like a court order was able to go for a second bite of the cherry, you can bet that they will do. So
mhm,
sometimes I've been known to walk out of court with a client who hasn't got the result, which we clearly know is in their child's best interest. And we'll say, okay, well, let's stop, let's regroup, let's what we can do going forward. So it might be that we make a fresh application a year down the line. It might be we work on a soft power option for the parent. So, for example, if they're not involved in the child's education, in the UK, you don't need a court order to be involved in the children's education. You can, and there are lots of things that parents won't do. So, for example, when it comes to the school, for example, it's common for parents to approach a school and say, "I'm this child's father, and I want to be involved in the education." And the first thing they'll be told is, "You're not allowed to do that unless there's a court order, or you need written permission from your ex-partner because because of the allegations made against you." A lot of parents will be disheartened by that and give up, not knowing that the law is really clear on this in the UK, that unless there's a court order saying otherwise, a parent with parental responsibility is fully able to participate in a child's education. Of course, if it turns out that one of the parents is telling the school that the other parent's not allowed to be involved with the school, it demonstrates the hostility again. We've been known to ask questions like, why is it in your child's best interests for your ex-partner not to be involved in their education? And then once again, it's picture building, but people have often got a lot more power than they realise, and we focus on the soft power as well as the hard power of this sort of stuff. Because sometimes the hard power, the court case, it just isn't going to happen, and we've all walked out of court with a poor result.
Mhm. Yeah, it can be a sad situation, when you walk out of there and it just didn't go the way people think it's going to go, because we've all been taught that there's justice in these courtrooms, and just it doesn't exist.
No, I think US court dramas have got an awful lot to answer for when it comes to this sort of stuff. I've done more than a few court hearings where what I've expected to happen, the opposite has happened. In both ways. There have been court hearings before where I think to myself, okay, we've got a slam dunk here. We've got all the evidence. We've got a really strong case. And the moment the judge walks in, things are not going to go your way, no matter what you do. And you think this order made by the judge is actually perverse. He's picked the best option and done the opposite. I've also had the opposite though, where I think to myself, okay, to use a phrase, we're going to get a legal kicking, and then what's happening? We've got a great result. But yeah, when you go to court, it's a huge gamble. You're spinning that wheel.
Mhm. It's just in light of our massive court case going on over here in Virginia with these celebrities, it's I think it's blatantly clear that the ex-husband is innocent.
Yeah, do you know, so it's really, I think the best thing I can take from that around the world is it's really good that it's got people talking and it's got people thinking about this. You know what? I know you've been, this has been one of your interests for years. Same here. But I'm also pretty sure that next year's time, when that case is old news, 99% of people are going to forget it. I hope that it has some kind of an impact. But people are only interested because it's celebrities. It's absolutely insane. All the stuff that I've seen, well, I've heard happening. I've seen things like this before. I mean, the whole incident about the human fecal matter in the bed.
Mhm.
Nothing like that. My partner, who works in the same line of work, Michaela, I remember she did one court hearing, and one of the reasons that a father wasn't permitted to see his child was because the family dog defecated in the bath. For some reason, that meant the child couldn't have a relationship with the father. And what the client working with my partner, do you know what the finding of the court was? There was no family dog in any point. There wasn't a family dog.
Hmm.
And sometimes you think, this is candid camera stuff. You're expecting to see the guy come up with the mic and say, "You didn't really believe this was real, did you?" Because this is insane, some of this stuff that happens. And when you're watching what happens in this case at the moment, this high profile case where there's people defecated in beds and they're shocked by it, I think it's fairly typical of this sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty scary, isn't it? I bet there's a lot of this that goes on, um, you know, on both sides, in these people's their relationships, But it's just I hate to say it, but I'm glad men are stepping forward and saying that they're being physically abused as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I know the current paradigm is the man is the perpetrator and the woman is a victim. Is a really really popular one at the moment. But I don't know. I think after you've been for a while, you realise that most of the violence is actually co-violent. I mean, one degree or another. I mean, I'm not saying it's always 50-50. It can be all sorts. But look, people are people. I imagine there's probably not a couple in the world where there hasn't been some kind of what could be constituted as abuse. And of course, no one's going to condone that. There's never a justification for things like physical violence. But it's not a black and white story here. Usually, I don't know, maybe it's someone squabbling over an object, trying to wrench a phone out of someone's hand, or someone slapping someone else, or throwing a drink over, that sort of stuff. Everyone, I guess that most people have been there to some degree, because we're only human. Men and women are only human.
Mm. And exchanging nasty texts back and forth, people do this all the time. I didn't, but I just, I don't know. I mean, I think, when these situations are ramping up, I think it's just best not to uh, put anything into a text. Don't put anything into writing.
Okay, yeah, that's an absolute crucial point. One of the things I often talk about, and I've done blog posts about, is anything you say or do or write before you do anything. Just imagine it's being discussed in a court hearing.
Mhm.
Here in the UK, we have solicitors and barristers. The solicitors tend to be more the paperwork kind of guys, and the barristers are more the advocates. But imagine you're in the UK and there's a barrister who's got a law degree from Oxford. Someone with that sort of accent, the Hugh Grant kind of accent, cross-examining you in a court hearing in front of a judge. You really don't want to be that guy or that woman on the stand. I've seen it before. I've had clients before, and they've looked at me like a rabbit in the headlights, and I've had to stare blankly into space because I can't be seen to coach them because they're under oath. Where what I've actually want to do is face plant, and just want the earth to swallow me up, because to think I've spent weeks and weeks and weeks helping you with your case, preparing, and now it's all being torn apart by some of a cut glass accent who has actually got a piece of paper which shows that text message you sent your ex-partner is indefensible.
Mhm. Oh yeah, that's so bad. I, I just think people should stay off of social media. Just stay off of anything that they can come after you with.
Definitely. I mean, my case was 5 years, and I made sure I didn't so much breathe a word of my case during those 5 years, because I thought to myself, I can imagine this being read out on social media. I've been that guy before. I've been that guy helping my client print the social media posts off. I've been the guy helping my client put together cross-examination questions. You've not lived. You've been to the Royal Courts of Justice in London and heard a High Court judge reading out the profanity that you've put into troll bundles when someone's describing their ex-partner in less than flattering terms. It's powerful stuff. It is. You really don't want to be giving the other side ammunition.
Right. Right. And that's what people are doing. They're giving the other side ammunition. It's like, don't
Yeah,
do that. Oh, yeah. It just, I don't know. I want to see how this case turns out with these two. And, you know, um, I hope justice is done, you know.
I hope so. It's really interesting to see. Obviously, two Hollywood actors, and a high-profile court case. Who's not going to be interested in it? It's even if you've got no interest in family law or false allegations, this is soap opera stuff. It's great television. It's great media.
Mhm. Well, it should show people that, it can happen to anybody.
Definitely. And we've even had in the past, we've had, funny believe it or not, we've had family law solicitors as clients before. People that want our assistance because they don't want to be risk bumping into someone that they that they actually know professionally,
Mhm.
and they do and say exactly the same thing as everyone else. Judges go through family law cases themselves. They might be saying about the way there's no defence for certain kinds of behaviour and certain kinds of language. They're only human. It goes to show that anyone can be sucked into this sort of thing.
Mhm. And a lot of people, they don't see this coming, or, maybe it's a nasty relative that, just comes after them. You just don't see it coming.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the old quote, isn't it? Let he who's without sin cast the first stone.
Mhm.
Everyone has done the things that they wish that they think to themselves, I probably shouldn't have done that. It's not going to paint me in the best light.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I know that, like after a court case, there was it was like my ex had called my parents trying to sway them into believing him. And
Yeah.
so my mother ended up talking to him, and then he wanted to talk to my dad, and my father completely refused to talk to him. So I had to call my lawyer and say, he's calling my parents. So he had
This
to write a he had to write a letter to the opposing attorney saying no contact with the parents, which cost me money for him to write that letter.
Yeah, this is insane though, because one of the things the courts often say in this country is that grandparents can be a really powerful tool for actually de-escalating things. I mean, you would think that two sets of grandparents who've got a grandchild at the heart of it, perhaps they're a little bit removed from the passion that the parents are going through, and then they can actually perhaps bring people together rather than do that sort of stuff. But yeah, you never know who's going to be on your side and who's going to be opposite you when this sort of thing happens.
Right. It's I don't know why, there's no loyalty in families anymore. My mother would say blood is thicker than water. I don't know, have you noticed a change in that?
Do you know what? I don't think I'm much one for nostalgia, if I'm honest. I suspect if you go back enough, you'll find that people don't change. I've been I've been working, funny enough, on the family history project, and one thing I've found is that people do all the same sort of stuff. The only difference is, perhaps they didn't talk about it quite so much. And we've definitely found skeletons in the cupboard and things that perhaps should have been laid to rest maybe 100 years ago. So I don't think people change. I just think that it's much more open than it used to be. But yeah, you're right. Blood is not thicker than water. And I think it comes down to one central thing, that when you're dealing with a case, the only person you can depend upon is yourself. It's as simple as that. You've got 100% ability to control what you do and say. You've got zero ability to control what anyone else does or says, including your own family members.
Mhm. Now, in over there in the UK, have you noticed, an increase of false allegations um, on men as opposed to women, or vice versa?
I think, like I say, with this high-profile case at the moment, people are much more talking about it more often. But it'll be remain to be seen when there's a public bust up, say on Facebook, to see what people do. Because I think it's one thing to talk about in the abstract and two people you don't know on a personal level, but when it comes to someone one of your friends, you'd think he wouldn't do that or she wouldn't do that, and people are going to take sides. People always project their own situations onto things.
Mhm.
So I think that remains to be seen. But I think overall it's not so much the law that needs to change. Because obviously people advocate for law change. No, I don't think. To be honest, I'm probably going to be really unpopular with listeners and possibly with yourself and other people. I don't think the law in the UK in particular is actually bad. It's a great piece of law. What the problem is how it's interpreted. No, there's nothing wrong with that. Don't think it's interpreted evenly or appropriately. The way it works over here in the UK is the family courts presided over by the president of the family division. The president of the family division issues guidance to all the other courts about how the Children Act should be interpreted, and takes the lead for things. Of course, we have an independent judiciary here. No, the judges are they're appointed. They're not elected. They are independent. When I went to a speech by the president of the family division a few years back, he said the thing is you have to realise the courts are independent. Whilst I can give advice, I cannot force judges beneath me to do anything else. What would typically happen is if an order is made that a litigant feels is an error in law, it can be appealed to a higher court and it be dealt with there. But the judges can only issue guidance. The President of the Family Division can only issue guidance. That's the problem. The problem is, I think, is the guidance and the interpretation of it, not the law itself. One of the things, for example, people often say that the court orders are not enforced in the UK. Ministry of Justice figures shows that less than 1% of enforcement applications ever actually succeed. More often they're hijacked by the person breaking the order and turn into a variation where they, of course, argue that there should be less contact because it clearly isn't working. When that sort of thing happens, well, the courts can make orders for enforcement. It can make orders for penal notices to lock people in prison. It can order community service. It can order fines for people. That never, ever, happens. There was one case a few years back where a Judge Wildblood, not that far from here on the other side of the Bristol Channel, actually said to a parent, said to a mother, if you don't follow the order, I'm going to I'm going to order the child with the father. And for a while, I thought that was going to happen, but it only made the news because it was so unprecedented. Enforcement doesn't happen. The law is in place. Enforcement could happen. It's just that it's chosen not to happen.
Mhm. Yes, that's what's happening over here, and people want judicial accountability, and it's not happening.
No, I mean the old get out is, in this case, for example, it wouldn't be in a child's best interest to put a person in prison. You know, no, the child doesn't want to see that mummy's been locked put in prison because of what daddy's done, and I can see that makes perfect sense. But we're looking at big picture here. If one parent cannot be trusted to facilitate a relationship with the other parent, well, maybe it's time to actually move the child to the other parents.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I mean, I agree with you there. Sometimes you're working with such a high conflict personality disorder, it's just not good for the child to be around that.
And and when that happens, I've even known the odd court case where the judge will say the parents are so entrenched in their views, that the only way we're going to do this is to remove one parent from the child's life.
Mm.
And it's absolutely perverse. These sort of things, I would say, these are cases that have gone on for years. I'd often say that in these high conflict cases, neither party has actually helped themselves a great deal. And it's the sort of thing that you need case management. Case management is something that I think is often lacking certainly in solicitors in this country. And I'm pretty sure lawyers, in the US, that a lawyer will be purely retroactive and stuff, reactive to stuff, and will just basically say, okay, this has happened, we're going to do this. Where what they should be saying is, we need to be setting up for 3, 4 steps ahead to actually, to move the case in the right direction.
Mhm. Yeah, this is sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, do you ever question your client's maturity level at any time?
That's one way of putting it. No, where I have, to use a UK phrase, read the riot act to a few clients. I remember I've been in the odd court hearing when I've marched out of a consultation with a client who's just once said something to the other side's solicitor or Kafkas, the eyes and ears of the court. We walked out and I said, perhaps in less than professional terms, that you're messing your case up. You might wish to consider your position and to apologise and take a different tack.
Mhm.
And I've done that before. Look, we're not here to give people tea and sympathy. We're here to actually help people get the best possible result for their kids. You know, that's what we do. We say to people, we give it to people blunt. Look, we say, look, we know it's hard. We know it's not fair. You can shout, you can rage. If you want to shout and rage at me. Once you've done that, we're still going to have to deal with this though. And you know what? You need to work out what your priority is here. If it's if it's basically punishing your ex-partner, the court will see that. For all its fault, the courts are not stupid.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, would you say over there, I hate to say over there, in the UK, your judges are, um, fair?
I remember as a judge said, no matter what he does, at least 50% of the people in front of him are not be very happy with the outcome. And the younger generation of judges, do you know what? I actually think they're actually better than the old school types. They definitely seem more amiable. I've taken part in cases where the things have not gone our way, and my client has still said, saying, I'm not happy with the outcome, but I felt heard. I don't know, maybe that's the smoke and mirrors. Maybe they give you the impression they're listening to you while not listening to you. But I don't know. I think overall, I actually think the judges are reasonable. I think the thing I always say over and over and over again to the people I assist and people that get in contact with me is that you have more power in your case than you probably give yourself credit for. You've got more power to damage your case than you give yourself credit for. And I've seen people snatch victory out of the jaws of defeat. I've seen people snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory before. And like I said, it's not easy. Of course, it's not easy, but you've got nothing better to strive for than a great relationship with your own children.
Mhm. I think sometimes people get caught up in all the paperwork and, the rhetoric that goes on in a courtroom, and, they're trying to win, but yet they're screwing up their case.
Oh, of course, and there's, let's face it, litigant baiting is a definite thing. I'm sure you get the same sort of thing where the opposing lawyer will wind up the client, and then you'll go into the court building and the courtroom, and then the client will perhaps say things that they aren't necessarily going to help their case. There's all sorts of mind games. There's all sorts of things designed to make people give up. I mean, one of the things that I've heard on a number of occasions is the other side will say, well, there will be a cost order made against you and you'll have to pay all the client, all the legal fees. And often when it's I involved, I will politely tell them that that I'm aware of the fact that courts rarely make costs in family court hearings in the UK, and it's unlikely to happen. And thank you for the conversation. I'll tell the usher we're ready to see the judge. But it's a lot of mind games. I spend a lot of time protecting my clients and say to them, look, the guy's trying to mess with you. Don't worry about it. We'll deal with it. One of the things that often a lawyer will do is frame things in a way as if the court's already made the decision, or the lawyer gets to make the decision. And the phrase we use is that will be a matter for the court, or you must make your representation before the court, which is basically which is just a polite way of saying go and tell the judge he's not going to agree with you either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've got to be really mentally strong
Yeah,
to go and argue. Yeah.
I would say don't go in on your own. If you're going to get a solicitor, get a lawyer. You know what? They work for you. You've got to be happy with these guys. You really want to be finding out if they're good before your hearing, not afterwards.
Right.
It's the same if it's same when it comes to us. Have a look, do your research. You know what? Prepare. We always prepare people for hearings. We have an hour-long meeting with people before a hearing where we tell them what the possibilities are, what sort of thing is going to happen, what our goal is for this particular hearing, just to get people in the right frame of mind, and it can make a huge difference. We break things into very small chunks. So look, you're not looking at the case that your children come and live with you. If it's say a directions hearing in the UK, there'll be a set number of things that you're dealing with. We'll say, okay, there's 3 things we need to achieve here. There's 1 thing that we've got to achieve, 2 things we'd like to achieve, 3 things would be nice. And we'll actually check those in with the client and check them out afterwards. And the client will say, okay, well, it was a lot easier when I broke it down. And or maybe we got number 1, but we didn't get 2 or 3, and I can live with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes, if you have a small victory, it's better than no victory at all.
I think I think it's the way you frame it. I mean, during my own long and protracted and hostile case, I managed to find victories in just about everything. So when my son's mother did something which I knew was particularly stupid, I thought, well, you're going to be dealing with that in the next court hearing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be using. I think the phrase I got is, you've got another inch of rope to hang yourself with. When we get to the judge. So I think there's victories in everything. If you want to see it that way, it's easy to feel that that everything's a defeat.
Mm-hmm. I think some people, the parents I talk to, they go into court with no expectations, because you don't know how you're going to walk out.
Well, like I say, that's why I say have a goal. Know what the court can and can't do, because the court's got protocol. It's got things that the courts have got certain powers. There's other things the court hasn't got powers for. So, for example, in the UK, the court hasn't got the power to make parents communicate. It can't order one parent to talk to another parent. It can actually make a inference if it decides that it's not in the best interest of the child for one parent to ignore the other parent. The judge will often say, I know I can't order you to communicate with your ex-partner, but I know we'll look very dimly upon it, and it'll be reflected in the order, when we make a decision. So that's the thing we say to people: don't die on hills that you could never fight. So if you're going to go into court and want the court to order your ex to speak to you, that's never going to happen.
Mm-mm.
So the court can order this, the court can't order that. So that's the thing. It's pre-framing it for people.
Yeah, it's a tightrope to walk.
Definitely is.
So how are your franchises going?
Do you know what? We've got the same sort of franchises. We're looking at 2 or 3 new franchisees around the country. I think we've got someone in Milton Keynes, which is a big modern city in Britain. It's laid out on a grid. It's one of the few cities in Britain that's laid out on a grid. Consider it a bit of a joke in the UK because none of our cities are laid out in grids. But Milton Keynes is a brand new city. We've got a franchisee there, right in the middle of the country. She's going to join. We've got I think another guy in London that's possibly going to join. We're looking to spread out across the whole of England and Wales. We can't cover Scotland though, because Scotland is a different jurisdiction. It's got a completely different set of laws.
Mm-hmm. You know, is there any rivalry? Do you find like Scotland does not like England?
But generally,
Well,
generally not in terms of anything else.
um, say you know, if you've got an English client going before a Scottish judge, how do you think they'll fare?
It would, when it comes to that sort of stuff, the first thing we need to sort out is jurisdiction. If we get a client who's English, if his children have just moved to Scotland, the first thing that will have to be established is, is it going to be here heard in a Scottish court or an English court? And there'll be an argument over that first of all. I don't think it makes much odds, if I'm honest. From what I know about Scottish law, which is a completely different act, because it's under the Scottish Parliament, from what I hear, fathers in Scotland have it harder than fathers in England or parents in England. I mean, for example, we charge for our assistance. We're not. If we were helping in Scotland, we would not be permitted to charge. There's no way we could actually spend our time doing this on a full-time basis because, like everyone else, we do need to eat.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know that about Scottish law, but I don't hear particularly great things about it. I don't hear particularly bad things about it. So it's probably hard for me to say.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to keep you all day, but is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would just say, look, if you're listening to this and you're going for a family law case, look, don't give up. Believe me, if you give up, you're almost certainly going to regret it at some point. There aren't many things that can't be reversed other than your children being adopted. If your children are being alienated against you, you know what? That's going to be one of the hardest things you're ever going to deal with, and that's going to be one of the most difficult things you're going to deal with. I can understand why that can be totally corrosive from a mental point of view, but your children will know on some level that if you've done your best for them, that's all that counts. One of the best pieces of advice I ever heard from someone who specializes in front of alienation is every time they wanted to do something for their kids that weren't in their lives, they'd write them a postcard or write them a letter and put them in a big box. And if the children come back in years to come and want some kind of relationship, you're able to demonstrate that you were thinking about them all that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good idea. Oh, why? If anyone wants to reach you, how can you be reached?
Okay, so the best thing is to look at our website, www.familylawAssistance.co.uk. If you search for me, Stephen Wade, Family Law Assistance, you'll find me. If you go onto TikTok and you type Family Law Assistance, you're actually going to find my partner, Michaela. She's recently managed to go viral on TikTok. She managed to get about 60,000 views the last couple of days, so you're going to find her. So
Oh, wow.
you'll find us. Everything's linked up. We're all over social media. We're hard to avoid.
That's excellent. TikTok is excellent, isn't it?
It is. We're just getting into it. So Michaela's gone from about 35 followers to over 1,000 within 24 hours.
Awesome. Well, that's good to hear.
It is, yeah.
Ah, great. Well, hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in the family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here in the future with Stephen Wade and even Michaela. I'm going to get her back on. And we will talk again in the future with other exciting guests as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.